Alright, so what do you need for your reversible holiday sign? So for this first side, the Christmas side, I'm going to use my vinyl stencils that I made during part 1. So if you need to know how to make these stencils, you can go to the video before this. You're also going to need some paintbrushes, so I'm using some foam ones. I also have some actual stencil paintbrushes, and then I have some little ones just in case I need to touch up. Also a pair of scissors just in case. I have some jute twine for the accent up at the top. My trusty weeding tool here. Some paint. So this is the white acrylic paint I want to use. And I also have some other colors here just in case. And then I'm also going to need some transfer tape to transfer my stencil on. So let's get started. Alright, so first things first, we're going to need to put some transfer tape on our stencils to attach them to the wood. And yes, I'm doing this all on my kitchen floor because this is a big project, so I need a lot of room. And if I spill paint, it's not going to be that big of a deal because it is acrylic, so it's not going to be that big of a deal. So we'll get some transfer tape. So what I like to do is I like to put transfer tape on all my stencils first, and then I like to apply them. So that's what I'm going to do right now. So I like to get the tape off with my weeding tool. And again, if you don't know how to make these stencils, so they're proportionate to your sign, just go to the first video before this and that will help you. Alright, so this one, so I can move it over here. Next, I'm going to do and sometimes you can actually use the same transfer tape. You can use the same piece to transfer them all over, but for this I don't have too many stencils, so I'm just going to do a piece of transfer tape for each piece of my stencil. Alright. Alright, so now you can see I have transfer tape on all of these stencils. So now I'm going to peel off my stencil for each one. And I'm going to start with the tree because the tree is going at the bottom of my sign. So I want to start with that and just work my way up. So I'm going to peel this off. Okay, so I'm going to put this pretty close to the bottom here, and I want to make sure I get it centered. As centered as possible anyway. It's really not that big of a deal if it's not perfect. But I want to get it pretty close to the bottom, so that looks pretty good. So I'm not going to completely stick it yet until I get everything else in place. I want to make sure all these stencils are able to fit first, and then I'll start peeling. So now I'm going to, one by one, start peeling these off and stick them to the wood. And I forgot to mention also, if you haven't noticed yet, you're going to need a piece of wood. This wood I got is 5 feet by 10, and it is a pine plywood I got from Home Depot. I bought a big sheet and just had them cut it for me. It was so easy, and it was way cheaper than buying a bunch of boards that are already pre-cut. It took a little more work, but in the long run it's a little more cost effective. So we're gonna peel this one off. Gotta be careful of the holly leaves because they have a lot of little intricate parts. And remember, if you get something like that that gets stubborn, just kind of work with it and make it want to stick to the stencil. All right. So now this one in theory would go about here. So now I'm gonna do the rest of these. So I have all my stencils down now. You can see I have them all down. I think you can see down there too. So yeah, this is a big project, so it's hard to be able to see everything. But now I'm just gonna scrape these down good, and I'm gonna pull the transfer tape off of them. So make sure I can get most of the air bubbles out of here. Then I'm just gonna pull my transfer tape off. And if there's like bubbles over here, that doesn't really matter. We just wanna make sure there's none by the actual stencil. So now I'm going to do this one. I'm gonna move this a little bit so it doesn't get messed up. Yeah, and you want to be careful because this stuff is, once it sticks, it's stuck, and then you risk ruining your vinyl stencil. That's another reason I like using the reusable plastic. They're so easy to move on and off. Yeah, that looks good. So I'm just gonna peel the transfer tape. Alright, so now I'm gonna do that for the rest of my stencils. So now we have our stencil all laid down, so you can see it's all laid down even up here. And you can't really see it, but the Mary's up here, and then we have our stencil going all the way down. So now it is time to paint this bad boy. So I got my brushes, my classy red solo cup that I like to keep them in. So I'm going to put these here, and I'm going to start with, I'm going to do white paint first, and I'm even going to do white paint up here. Even though I want the Mary to be red, I'm going to put white paint over this first, and then I'm going to do a reverse stencil later so it'll have the white outline, because the red paint I have doesn't really show up that well on here. So I'm going to paint it all white first, and then I'll go back and do some red. So I'm going to need some white paint, again using this Artist Loft acrylic paint. I'm going to need some more after this, I'm running low. So that. I'm also going to need some green paint for the holly leaves. So what I like to do is I do a mix of these two. So I have this darker green and this lighter green. These are just some Craft Smart acrylic paints, again from Michaels. So I like to do this dark green and then just put a little bit of light green in it and then mix them up. Because if it's too dark, you can't really see it that well. It is so hot in my apartment right now. I'm dying. You even have the window open. Freaking dying. Alright, so I have my green paint and my white paint. And then I know there's berries on these holly leaves too, but I'm going to go back and just do those freehand later. So you can do those however you want. Alright, so let's start doing this. Again, I'm not Mod Podging this because I feel like Mod Podge, I like it for certain things, but sometimes I feel like it just peels up my paint. So I'm going to move this down. I'm going to start up here with my Mary. I'm just going to start with a light coat of paint first. And for this vinyl stencil, I'm going to do some light brush strokes since it's really stuck on there good and nothing is too prone to lift up. I'm going to do brush strokes. Again, this is just a light coat of paint for now, and then we'll go back and do something heavier. So now I'm going to go over with a heavier coat of paint. And this white up here, I don't really care if it's too heavy because I'm going to go back over it with red. Make it look a little like retro-y, vintage. And I'll show you what I mean by that later because I know it probably didn't make a whole lot of sense. Alright, so I'm going to pull this off now. Again, I like to peel the stencils when it's still wet because if it's dry, it's going to crack your paint or peel your paint and you'll be very sad. I've done that before. Alright, so I'm just going to put that there. Now I need my weeding tool, which is way over here. I'm going to weed out the middle parts of these. Looks all nice and crispy. So now let's do the first part of the Christmas. So for this, I'm going to actually start, I'm going to do some of the holly leaves first. I don't want too much paint on here. And with these holly leaves, there's a lot of sharp edges and like corners, so you just got to be a little bit careful when you go over these so you don't pull up your stencil. Alright, so I'm just going to do this one first. Let that start to dry so I can do another coat. Now I'm going to start doing the letters. Again, this is a pretty light coat of paint to start off with because you can always add more. Just again doing brush strokes here. Oops, sorry, just hit my little tripod deal. So since these two are separate stencils here, just be careful that you don't get too much paint in between the stencils. You can always like rinse it off or take a little Q-tip to it, but just be careful once you get to the edges. Alright, so we'll start to let that dry a little bit just so we can do another coat, and we're going to do one more coat of the holly leaves. And again, if it's not as dark as you'd like the paint, you can always go back later. Again, be careful when you get to these edges. You don't want to get it you don't want to get too much paint on the board. It's my bottom line there. And another thing too, I think, to making these look nice is you want the brush strokes to go the same way So when you take the stencil off, everything looks really clean. Just my opinion. Alright, one more little coat. And again, you can do whatever colors you want. You can paint the board. You don't have to stain it like I did. You can do whatever you want. So I'm just going to do these holly leaves one more time. Just make sure they're not too dry. And I'm going to start peeling this up. And again, just go slow. If the stencil rips, doesn't really matter. You can go back and get it later. Oop. See, I paint all over my hands. Go back with our weeding tool and get this R. Okay. Oh, there's a little piece of vinyl right here too. There. Okay. So far, so good. So let's keep it going. Alright, so we're finishing up the end here. So I'll do my holly leaves first. This I like this Craft Smart paint, but I feel like it's a little more watery than the Artist Loft paint. Oh, and I forgot to tell you what kind of vinyl I'm using for this stencil. I'm using, I think it's a combination of Cricut vinyl and so Cricut just non-permanent, normal, removable vinyl, and I have some Oracle 631 also. So it's a little combo action. So now we're going to peel this. Okay. All right. So now you can see we have our Merry Christmas, and now we got to do the tree part. So the tree you can really do however you want. I like to do this green color again. And just be careful when you do this because there's no like barrier between the star and the stand, so you just kind of got to be careful. I did it once and it was like really blendy up here. It was like actually really pretty. I don't know what I did or how I did that, but it looked really good. So I'm going to start with the tree. So I'm just going to brush. And I'm going to stop kind of like where the stand begins. And again, you could put anything here. You could put like a cute little present. You could do a like a big snowflake, whatever, really whatever you want. So I'm going to need a little space somewhere here for this yellow I want to do for the star. New brush for that. And I'm going to just start with the tiniest bit of paint for the star first. And I'm just brushing. Do this red for the stand. Just brush, 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 brush. So for the fall side of this, I'm going to show you guys how to do it with those reusable stencils I made. So if you need to know how to use if you need to know how to make a reusable stencil, you can go to that video, and you can see how to make those. And so you'll just make it with these Christmas letters or with the fall letters. So I'll show you once we get to that. Okay, so now you can see we're pretty close to done here. We're just gonna peel off our tree. All right. So now what I want to do, and again, this is just my personal preference, I'm going to go back over to the Mary part, and I'm going to do a overlay of red, and I'll show you guys how I'm going to do that. So how I'm going to make the white outline around the Mary is I printed out another copy of this Mary stencil, so I'm just going to place it over it. And I don't really care if it's too perfect or not, because I want to get that outline, because I'm going to do red and then the white will pop out behind it. So I'm going to apply my stencil like I normally would. Because what I've done in the past is I've gone back and I've painted trying to outline it, and it just does not. It's messy and I don't like it. So now I'm going to go over this with red. And now the red's going to pop a lot more too, because it has that white underneath it to give it a little more depth. And actually, while that's drying a little bit, what I can do is I'm going to go back and do some of these berries. I'll use this brush. And I do not do these so they're like perfect. I just kind of make little circles. And then I'll go back once everything's dry, and I'll give it a little white dot just to give it some dimension. Okay. So I'm going to go over this one more time so it looks a little more solid. Need like a teeny bit more red. And for this, I'm using that Artist Loft again. This paint, I really like this paint a lot. The more I use it, the more I really like it compared to that Craft Smart. Both from Michaels, but the Craft Smart's just a little cheaper. So now, moment of truth, I'm going to peel this up, and hopefully I get a little nice white outline. Yep. Almost lost you guys there for a second. Here we go. All right. How funny would that have been? This like just crashes, ruins everything. This stupid tripod. So now, where's my weeding tool? Just weed out the insides of these. And if you want, you can go back around it and do another outline. But there you have it. You have your beautiful first side of your, I guess I should do it this way. Yellow. So beautiful. And stay tuned. We'll do part 2 in just a little bit.